Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Candace and I am your astrologer with Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. I am excited to be back to talk to you guys about Jupiter's move into Pisces. As I film this right now, it's very appropriate. I am actually visiting New Orleans. I'm staying in not really the French Quarter. I usually stay there. I'm actually staying a little bit closer to Frenchmen Street. And it has been raining a lot. You can tell, all kinds of noise in the background. You can't really get away from that. But that's what happens when you film on location. Rolling thunder, it was pouring. That's not unusual here, but I just think it's kind of interesting. It starts happening right when I'm getting ready to film my Jupiter and Pisces video. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my view on this transit and why I think it's pretty cool, and give you guys some insights into how it's going to affect each of the 12 signs. And I'll give you all of the dates that Jupiter is going to be moving in and out of Pisces. Right now, it's sitting at 29 degrees of Aquarius, so it's at that party degree. But Jupiter moving into Pisces, it's going to be there for the very first time since 2010. Jupiter changes signs roughly every year. So if you think back to what was going on in your life in 2010, you may see some similar themes depending on what was going on at that point in time in your life. But all in all, I gotta tell you, I am super stoked for Jupiter to go into Pisces, because I talked a little bit about this transit with Mike on my other show that I do, the podcast, the Midheaven podcast. So you can check that out too if you want more kind of a lively, fun interpretation. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what this means, and I think how this is going to affect us on a collective level, but also on a personal level for each and every one of you guys. So Jupiter is currently in Aquarius. It's going to move into Pisces, and it's going to be in Pisces for a brief period of time before it retrogrades and it goes back into Aquarius. What does this mean? Basically, the next month to 3 months, we're going to get a little sneak preview, because we're kind of double dipping. Jupiter is going to move into that sign, and we're going to get a feel for all of the goodies that it's going to bring us in 2022. So if you have a pen and paper handy, or if you want to take these notes down, I'm going to give you all of the movement of Jupiter this year and next year, so you can kind of stay plugged into when this change happens, especially if you are a Pisces sun, moon, and rising, or you are a Jupiter-based chart. So if you're a Sagittarius rising, you're really going to feel these changes. So for 2021, on May 13th, in just a couple days, Jupiter is going to go into Pisces. And until about June 20th, 21st, then Jupiter will enter his retrograde. And on July 28th of 2021, Jupiter dips back into Aquarius. So we've literally got mid-May to the end of July where you're going to see this like little snapshot of what Jupiter is going to have in store for you. Then on October 19th, Jupiter turns direct in Aquarius, and on December 29th, 2021, Jupiter will go back into Pisces, right? Because planets stop, they retrograde, they go direct, they come forward. Now, there's a lot of talk about Jupiter going retrograde. If Jupiter is retrograde, do we get as much of the goodies from Jupiter? When I see Jupiter retrograde in transit, not in a natal chart, I see that being more like, okay, now we're working with whatever new information, new expansion, new knowledge, new abundance, new gifts, new joy, right? We're going to actively work with that more on an internal level. So is it better to have Jupiter direct or retrograde? I'm not going to get into that. It's not really so much about that. Just know that when Jupiter does go retrograde, even when he's in Pisces, you're still going to get all the goodies. It might just be more you starting to kind of integrate that new Jupiter energy into your life. Then in 2022, on May 10th, Jupiter will move from Pisces into Aries. On July 27th, 2022, Jupiter will go retrograde. On October 28th, 2022, Jupiter will return to Pisces. And then it will go direct on November 22nd, 2022. And then finally, Jupiter will say goodbye to Pisces, and it will leave to move fully into Aries on December 20th, 2022. And, Jupiter will not come back into Pisces until about 2033, if I do my math correctly. So how is this going to affect you guys? I'll get to all of the 12 signs at the end, but just to keep things really simple, if you are a water sign, sun, moon, rising, so if you are a Cancer or a Scorpio, you will positively benefit from this energy because it's going to create harmonious trines to other placements you have in water, and we'll talk about what that means. If you are a mutable sign, so if you are a Virgo or if you are a Sag, what you are going to experience is that there is, or Gemini, sorry Gemini, I didn't forget about you. You're going to experience Jupiter squares, which can be this push to do things that are a little bit bigger than what you're used to. It can over magnify a situation or apply pressure for you to really create change. And if you have placements that are in any of the fixed signs, for the most part, it's not going to affect you too much. And that's probably for the better because you've got a lot of things going on with the Saturn-Uranus squares. But Jupiter in Pisces overall is going to play very, very, very well with the earth and water signs. And earth and water signs, they get along well because they create mud, right? We've got the water signs, which are emotion and intuition, and then the earth signs, which are really about stability and what's practical and what's solid. So I think Jupiter in Pisces can actually be wonderful for those two elements. It will affect the air signs and the fire signs a little differently though. So let's get into talking a little bit about Jupiter and what Jupiter does. You know, Jupiter was known in terms of mythology. He was the king of all of the gods, right? So he rules over travel and philosophy, luck, abundance, expansion, wisdom, rules. Not a lot of people realize that. He is very knowledgeable and very noble. Jupiter has a focus and an emphasis on what is the noble thing to do, what is the right thing to do, what is the moral high ground. And I think what's kind of interesting about, I think this next move of Jupiter into Pisces is we're coming out of like several very hard years where Jupiter has been in very close proximity to Saturn, and Jupiter has also been in Saturn signs, right? So if we think back to like the last couple of years, 2020, we had Saturn and Jupiter conjunct in Capricorn, and Pluto is in the mix too. So I don't really feel like we got the best run of Jupiter, and it doesn't really do well there. It's kind of in detriment in that sign anyway. Jupiter doesn't do so well in Capricorn because there's too many rules and regulations, and there's too much ending in loss, actually. A lot of structure when it's in Capricorn. And then recently, this year, we've seen, Jupiter move into Aquarius, and that is still a Saturn-based sign. And it has been closely linked to Saturn really since about February this year. As of like the last month or so, Saturn has now gotten more and more and more space from Jupiter because Jupiter moves much more quickly than Saturn. So now that we're seeing it, hit that 29 degrees and it's on the brink of going into Pisces, this is really the furthest that we've seen Jupiter be from Saturn in the better part of the last 2 years. So just having Jupiter away from Saturn, having Jupiter go into a sign where it's very happy in Pisces, I think that this is going to bring quite a bit of blessings and just overall a huge mood shift. And when we look at Pisces, right, because Pisces is a mutable water sign, it is the ruler of the 12th house. So there is some aspect of completing and clearing and working on a more subconscious level or working on a more spiritual level. Pisces can have both sides, like every sign does, right? We see that the zodiac is really made up of 6 archetypes that has contrast and duality, not necessarily 12. Of those 12 signs, there is a lot of complementary aspects that you get from the opposite sign. So when we look at the 12th house of like all-knowing and that collective energy, that psychic collective energy that everybody feeds off of, topics like spirituality or film, music, all kinds of things are really going to expand because this is Neptune's realm. But I also think that we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to start seeing more innovations when it comes to film and technology, when it comes to cameras and screens and illusions, right? We're going to see all kinds of weird things start happening with that stuff. I think there's going to be much more of a focus and an emphasis on mental health and what it means to actually start taking better care of mental health. And there might be, you know, all kinds of new studies and all kinds of things that are going on with people learning more about experimental medicine. Certainly, I think that this is going to open the door for psychedelics, but used more in a therapeutic kind of way. And we'll also see just a bigger wave of consciousness rising and people becoming more aware of their intuition and becoming more aware of the things that they're feeling, right? Because Pisces is like a sponge and it's super empathic. So I feel like as if the last 2 years, there wasn't enough of everybody being in their feelings. You know, Jupiter, it magnifies. It's the biggest planet. And what it does is it shines a light on certain topics of our life and it makes it bigger. So if you have quite a few placements in Pisces, it's really going to magnify that. And I think that we're just going to see that, you know, a lot of people are going to start really waking up and really realizing, kind of like Pocahontas, like everything has a vibration, everything is connected, everything is connected to each other. And even if we don't always physically see it, we feel it, right? We feel that connection. On the flip side, I think that we may still see the darker side of the Neptune Pisces energy, where people who have been isolating themselves may have a really hard time adapting and coming back into the real world post-pandemic, whenever that ultimately ends up ending. And I say ending, I mean, we're not going to go back to the way things were. That's just not going to happen. I think we're going to be moving forward and having a lot of changes in how we navigate the world and how we travel with Jupiter in Pisces. But I think that it's going to be harder for some people because they may find that they are more prone to issues with addiction, whether it's drugs or alcoholism or prescription medication. I also feel like it might create shifts in spiritual communities and people who are moving further away from organized religion and going deeper into spirituality. Now, that can be a double-edged sword, to each their own. You know, it doesn't matter what you believe in. In this next year, as a result of this transit, people are going to cling on to their beliefs more than ever before. So there's going to also be like a lot of like blind faith, right? Where there may be a rise in a lot of like ayahuasca communities, and that can be good in some ways, but we can also have a lot of like false prophet stuff going on as Jupiter gets closer to Neptune. Definitely a lot of drinking the Kool-Aid. And I do see the possibility for there to be beginnings of new cults, whether it's spiritual cults or whatever. Spirituality is definitely going to be on the rise. I do believe that we're also going to see, and this will probably be more so next year when Jupiter really comes into Pisces and it starts making the conjunction with Neptune, a huge focus on what's really going on behind the scenes with the organized religions of the world. There may be some exposure of corruption, of deception, of manipulation, and not just religion. It'll be spiritual communities. I think it's also going to be secret communities that are starting to form, secret practitioners that are gathering together. I also think that we're just going to see that if there is corruption, right, that's going on in any of these realms, we're going to start to be exposed, and they're going to start to be exposed, and we're going to start to see it. So Neptune can still deal with abuse and misleading or hiding things, right? Pisces also, you know, it's ruled by Neptune, and Neptune is the god that is associated with the sea. So he is in control of water, bodies of water, storms. I think that we might see a lot more tropical storms. I think we are going to see more flooding. We're also going to see a lot more, there might be more rain going on in certain parts of the world. So be mindful of that if you're somebody who's living closer to a coastal city. You know, that might be something that's going to happen, especially with some of the aspects that we're going to be seeing with Jupiter conjunct Neptune. And we're also going to see Jupiter make some sextiles to Uranus and Taurus. And part of me wonders like how that excessive water is going to affect land, right? Like, are we going to see water, like sea levels like rise? And, you know, a small rise in sea level doesn't sound like a big deal, but it can be catastrophic to certain coastal cities. So that'll be something to watch as well. I also feel like you're going to see a lot more information coming out about the oceans, and there can be a lot more exposing what's happening in the oceans, whether it's we're overfishing or obviously we know we can be better to the planet. But I think we're going to start to see with aspects to Uranus that there is going to be facts and all kinds of data that's going to show you where our lack of caring for the oceans really does affect our long-term health and wellness when it comes to the state of our planet. So there's going to be much more focus and emphasis on cleaning up the oceans, understanding more about the oceans, going deeper, right? Exploring more, because Jupiter wants to explore. So I think that we're going to see all kinds of cool stuff pop up where we're going to start really learning more about the ocean and where we can take better care of the ocean to be able to protect our future, right? And whether that means we're going to invest more time and energy in exploring and being able to find new ways of cultivating food. Like I think that we're going to start seeing like all kinds of water farming and ways to be able to really utilize the ocean for energy or for power. We may also find things that we have not seen before. and part of me like looks at that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, and I've thought about this a lot since I was like a little kid. And I'm like, where is Atlantis? Like, where is it? Like, are we going to find it? Especially if you're somebody who's into Edgar Cayce, you should check out some of his volumes. The Sleeping Prophet. He was an intuitive. He's also a medical intuitive. And when he would go into a trance, he would talk about all sorts of things because he would channel this information from source. And he spoke extensively about Atlantis. And that's a pretty popular topic in the spiritual community because everybody seems to feel like, or at least there are groups of people that feel like they have connections to that energy. I wonder if we're going to find artifacts or if we're going to uncover and discover shipwrecks or ruins or treasure, right? Jupiter being treasure, that we're going to find in the ocean, and that there is something very valuable, both in a sense of culture, but riches and wealth and expansion and knowledge. We're gonna find something. So that's probably the biggest thing that I'm excited for, and just the information that comes from that. Like what we may uncover might be like groundbreaking. So I'm fingers crossed that we end up finding Atlantis. We'll see. So what am I missing here? Like I said, kind of building off of the exposing the corruption within organized religion. I wonder if it's going to be the birth of new ones, right? And where Pisces in the 12th house, it's kind of like where everything melts and kind of comes together. It's like that melting pot of everybody collectively. So what we may see, especially with Jupiter in Aquarius, with Saturn in Aquarius, is the breakdown, right, of religions that aren't working, that are no longer really like applying to our modern day life. And granted, this may be the beginning, right? We're kind of wrapping up this age of Pisces, hopefully at some point in the next 100 years going into the age of Aquarius. But we will start to see over the next several years the downfall of religions that aren't working, but we might see the birth of new ones, the merger of certain religions with other belief systems, acceptance with other belief systems. Granted, some of these people might start practicing in private, but that's something interesting that will happen as well. Now, I can't talk about Neptune without talking about the virus. And I'm kind of sick about talking about it. I'm sick of hearing about it, probably like you. But I see Jupiter coming into Pisces and dancing with Neptune, where you really want to be careful what you believe in, right? Because Jupiter is the did you know, or the faith bringer, or the person who prays, right? When it's in Pisces, we want to pay attention to what we're giving energy to, what we're believing in, what we think we know. And with Neptune in the mix, it's really going to be a test of faith. So it's what do you believe in, right? So do you believe that the virus is real? Do you believe that you need a vaccine? Do you believe it's safe to go outside and travel, right? And certainly traveling is going to happen. Jupiter going into Pisces, one thing I didn't really expand on, and I will in a second, is how that planet and that sign works. But there is going to be a boom in travel, especially, foreign travel, Jupiter in Pisces, or people wanting to start going on cruise ships again, or people wanting to start going to the beaches again. We're going to start seeing more of this. going back to what I was saying about, you know, Jupiter being in Pisces. So traditionally, Jupiter is the planet that is associated with Sagittarius, right? And Sages are fearless and very knowledgeable, and they definitely appreciate culture and philosophy. And there is this sense of them always on a quest for knowledge, right? You see them, they're always catching flights, always taking courses, learning, teaching. So Jupiter in Pisces, it's like, if this was Jupiter in Sag, Jupiter in Pisces is like, it knows no boundaries, right? It knows no limits. So Jupiter in this sign, what it's going to do is it's just going to blow past any limitations, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and it's really coming up next to, nuzzling up next to Neptune. It can be ecstasy or agony. If you are somebody who is going to put such a focus and an emphasis on sobriety, right? If that's like your thing in the next year, then hanging out around a bunch of bars or around a bunch of people who might be drinking or who might be using, you energetically are going to be more likely to absorb that and suck that up, right? So it's like 2021, 2022, like vibes are a real thing. Now people are going to start realizing that we are going to be very much affected by our environment. And water energy works very differently than the other elements. Water energy, it kind of trickles in or it seeps in. It's psychic, it's emotional, it's intuitive, but water is meant to be therapeutic, it's meant to be healing. So I want you guys to think about Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces as like, over the next 18 months, it's going to shine a light on what do you believe in, even if it's something that you can't see. It's going to test your belief system. It's going to test your manifestational kind of beliefs. And I guess the kind of like the silver lining with Jupiter conjunct Neptune can be wish fulfillment, right? Because Jupiter wants to give you more. It wants to give you abundance. It wants to give you knowledge. In Pisces, it's just going to amplify all of that energy. And when you meet with Neptune there, it's going to be like this coming to God moment where you realize that you're either going to be in alignment with your vision and your beliefs and your dreams, so you can receive that, right, energetically, spiritually, or there's going to be many situations for people where if they've given their time or their energy or their money or their lives to something and they've sacrificed something, because Pisces can be sacrificed, that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction can be like kind of like in Scooby-Doo, where they take the mask off the villain, and then you're like surprised and you're like, oh my gosh, it was this person. A lot of people are going to have a Scooby-Doo moment where they're going to look at their church, or they're going to look at their job, or they're going to look at their spouse, or you know, their finances, and they're going to realize like, oh my God, like I gave all of my attention and all of my belief and all of my trust to this one thing, and I got deceived. And not everything is visual with Pisces, right? It really deals with everything that's going on collectively and how it affects you on a personal level. So it's the world and what's going on in the world and how it affects us spiritually or emotionally on a personal level, how it affects our dreams, our intuition, our sleep patterns. So there's going to be a lot of that stuff going on. A recommendation for this transit for everyone, especially because Jupiter is making sextiles to Uranus and Taurus. We're seeing that innovation in finances. We're seeing that innovation in values. Our values are changing, right? Especially over the last 2 years, I think it's really put things in perspective for people where we need to have new solutions for finances. We need to have new solutions for resources, for food. Our beauty standards are changing. Our self-care standards are changing. And Jupiter will be making sextiles to Uranus and Taurus, more so in 2022. But we're going to feel it. And we're going to see where working together collectively, Pisces, is actually building a solid foundation for security and resources into the future. That's really, I mean, the water farming thing it's definitely a thing, right? And we might start seeing people wanting to invest in buying real estate that's going to be floating on the ocean, or all of these like eco cities that they're building out in the ocean. It's not just about going to Mars. I think we're going to start seeing other ways of being able to have security and life from the oceans. But this also requires us to learn more about that, right? Jupiter is going to bring so much information from scientists and marine biologists and weather forecasters and all kinds of people who are going to come in and be willing to start showing us how we can start really kind of working with Mother Nature and be able to prevent there being any further damage to the oceans and water in general, bodies of water in general. Although I do see how Venus can have connections to fresh water. This seems to be more about, you know, salt water and fishing and all that stuff. I'm trying to think what else. Am I missing anything else? I'm sure more will come back to me. And as we go through these transits, I'll come back and I will build and talk more about this. I do think that it's important for people to be looking more so into dream interpretation. I do think it's going to be important for people to be practicing mindfulness, having a really great spiritual kind of routine where you're putting more attention into really getting that meditation in daily, to really reflecting, maybe listening to binaural beats or alternative therapies. And it can be hands-on healing. It could be Reiki. It could be people who are going and doing like cranial sacral therapies. Stuff that involves water and clearing with water, whether this is spiritual baths and taking your salt baths and creating salt scrubs, especially with Pisces and Taurus. To me, that's like herbal remedies, tonics, working with herbs, working with Bach essences, anything that allows you to cleanse and purify and clear. Neptune can also deal with haziness or fog. I could definitely see some vision things coming up from some people as well. So like I said, I'll come back. I will put more into this as we go along. I think this is, for the most part, pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. So let's get into how it's going to affect each and every one of the 12 signs. And I'll give you a little bit more information about how it's going to affect you on a sign-by-sign basis. With all of my predictions, I always recommend listen to your sun, moon, and rising. Your sun is going to very much be more of like a prediction or an insight into what you need for your joy, for your happiness, for your livelihood. It may not physically manifest, but it's what is actually going to feed your soul. And then the rising sign is going to be more about what's actually happening in your life, right? So what you're physically going to see transform. So you want to listen to your rising sign and your sun sign for sure, and then you can put these two together. If that is too complicated for you, and that's challenging, maybe you're just a new astro baby and you're learning about this stuff, book a session with me, especially if you are a Pisces, sun, moon, or rising. If you're a Sagittarius, also it can be a really good time to check in with an astrologer. You can see my links to all my social media and my website below. It's beyondtheveiledtarot.com. You can get a one-on-one session with me. We can take a look at your chart and come up with an astro roadmap for your Jupiter abundance plan for the next 18 months. All right, so let's start with Aries. Aries, a lot of the things that I've been talking about, it's going to apply to you because we speak generally about the planets and the houses. But for you, Jupiter is going to be going through your 12th house. So I see this first and foremost as an opportunity for you to have like a renewal of faith. If there is something that you need to release and let go of, Jupiter will help you do that. I see a lot of Aries risings and suns that are going to be traveling to foreign lands. They're going to be learning more about spirituality, meditation, clearing. But the guardian angel thing is kind of cool because Jupiter in your 12th house says whatever is ending, it's ending because it's here to protect you. Like there is some kind of shield that's around you. So it may seem like certain things are coming to a close, but those things that are coming to a close are actually to protect you spiritually and emotionally. New beliefs are going to happen. It's very spiritual, very tranquil, and it's a really great time to go and visit temples, churches, monasteries, do retreats, things where you're able to go and do your 12th house stuff and just rest and recuperate. It's very important for you to have that this year. Your dreams might also be way more, bang on than usual. You might have quite a few reoccurring dreams that are things that actually manifest in the future. So that can be kind of cool. For Taurus, this is taking place in your 11th house. So this is new friends and associations, meeting people who are very different. They might be more spiritually minded. They're going to open up your belief system. They're going to help you expand your life goals and your beliefs. I think that you might meet some really weird and kind of kooky people. They can be friends and meeting people from all over the world, especially if you're getting more affiliated with like networking and like working online. You're going to start meeting a lot of people that are going to teach you something, and it can be great for wish fulfillment because your 11th house is wishes. So to have Jupiter go through there, it's like good parties, good food, gatherings, get-togethers, like all kinds of fun stuff is going to happen. Lots of celebrations happen when Jupiter is in your 11th house. For Gemini, this is a new vision for your career, especially those of you who are connected to the industry in the realm of film, whether it's acting or filming or being behind camera, editing, or if you are involved in spirituality, or if you are involved in stuff that's more like esoteric and kind of like Piscean. It's going to give you a new opportunity to see all kinds of shifts happening for you when it comes to your career. So think back to about 12 years ago and you'll think about some new expansion that happened within your career. Jupiter sitting in your 10th house is going to get you more exposure, right? So for Geminis in this next year, you're going to see this leveling up where it's like if a job is not cutting it for you emotionally or spiritually, yes, it can dissolve, but to bring you something new, to bring you something better. So keep that in mind because this is really good for work stuff. I could definitely see people launching businesses, people getting managed if there's somebody who's out in the public eye. It can also be a really great opportunity for you to take a new job or maybe become a boss in some way. So that's kind of cool. For Cancer, this is taking place in your 9th house. So this deals with, travel, completion of higher education, teaching, learning, traveling, right? Especially in Pisces. Many Cancers are going to either start or complete a higher education program. They may be somebody who also themselves, they start teaching, right? Because there's all that yummy energy that's happening from your 9th house and it's coming directly towards your ascendant. You may have the opportunity to relocate, especially if you're interested in moving to a foreign country. You may have the opportunity to buy land in a foreign country. I could see that happening. It's great for people who are teachers. It's great for people who are journalists, writers, publishers, filmmakers, people who want to go and get their information out there. This is also a renewal of faith for you, Cancer, and it's going to give you the opportunity to really start aligning your beliefs with what you're doing out in the world. Foreigners show up, gurus show up. Jupiter in the 9th house is notorious for somebody coming into your life and mentoring you or you becoming the mentor. So that's kind of cool. For Leo, this is your 8th house. So this is all about transformation, benefactors, inheritances, magnification of taxes, and joint finances. So this is where Jupiter can be sweet or salty. I think with Neptune there, you really want to be careful if you do have any joint resources or finances with a partner or a business partner, or if you've got somebody managing your investments, really make sure you know what's going on and don't let any shady stuff happen. I can see how some Leos can be more predisposed this year of financial fraud, crimes, things like that. Maybe people hacking an account, getting a debit card. Be careful. Be careful who's giving your information to people and who has access to that or who is managing that. And just be keeping an eye on that stuff at all times. But Jupiter in the 8th house can be an inheritance, especially if it's going through Pisces. It can be that money comes through a donation. It can be that if you are in the nonprofit world or you're wanting to start a nonprofit, it can be a wonderful time to do that. There can be a benefactor that can show up in your life, or a sugar daddy or mommy that can come into your life. Inheritances also do happen here. I also see insurance payouts and settlements happen through this space as well, especially if you have any outstanding hospital bills and you're going through anything legally. That can be something that can pay out, or, maybe unfortunately, because the 8th house is dealing with, it does deal with insurance. I have seen some situations where, somebody gets rear-ended and then they get cut a check for fixing the car, and then they actually pay out more than what it costs to fix the car. Right? That kind of stuff can happen. So that's the sweet and salty side. Now, Jupiter in the 8th house can be great for sex. It can be great for, you know, connecting in terms of intimacy or learning more or practicing Tantra. It can also be really great for just detoxing and clearing and spiritually or sexually kind of clearing your energy and treating sex more like it's a spiritual union. So you can go deeper with that as well. For Virgo, this is your 7th house. So it's all about relationships and relationship renewal. It can be a time where you meet somebody who's very different, who may be a foreigner. They might be culturally different than you. You might meet somebody who really enhances your view of relationships and opens you up to relationship. You know, Jupiter in the 7th house can definitely be like a relationship buffet, right? Many Virgos may meet a partner who ends up being their husband or wife. You may also meet somebody who lives far away. So there seems to be some kind of like either distance or some cultural differences that happen, especially with some of the eclipses going through your 4th house. There is a possibility that, you know, you relocate and then you meet somebody, or maybe you meet somebody online and they live in another state or even in another country. And there's this back and forth with, well, do you come to me or do I go to you? But Jupiter in the 7th can be a really great omen for marriages, engagements, new business partnerships, and new opportunities for you just to like fall in love and have a union. So it's going to be very, very lovely for Virgos. For Libra, this is your 6th house. So it's going into a part of your chart that's going to deal with your daily routine. Now in Pisces, it's about integrating more of your mental health routines into your day-to-day life, making time to meditate, making time to eat well. Changes in your diet are going to happen. You might find that you want to stop drinking, you want to stop smoking cannabis, maybe you want to cut out meat. All kinds of things happen like this when you have Pisces in the 6th house. It can be harder for you to focus on your day-to-day routines. So it's showing you where you lose a lot of time not staying grounded and not staying focused. It will help you get healthier, but I think under the guides of Pisces, it's like, you know, maybe having a new therapist or having a new doctor, or maybe you go to a new like hands-on healer. It's about integrating faith and health. I mean, that Jupiter in Pisces will be that for everybody, but more so for you. You may adopt a new animal or have a new pet. You may also be super busy and need to hire a housekeeper, or you might need to hire somebody to work for you or to assist you, or you might need to have employees because the 6th house deals with employees. But all in all, you're going to find that you love work more. You enjoy work more. Maybe you're filming and working on something. Maybe you're starting a nonprofit, or you're working on a cause that you really believe in. There is some focus and emphasis on wanting to do something where you're being of service and you're giving back. And yeah, it's quite wonderful for Libras. And then for Scorpio, this is your 5th house. So that deals with pregnancy, true love, romance, creative projects, filming, stuff that deals with the 5th house is like your heart space. So to have Pisces in the 5th house is really amazing because it does talk about your vision when it comes to self-expression and true love. If you are somebody who works with children, it can be a much more enjoyable time. You might find that younger people somehow factor into your life more this year. You might meet a true love, or you might really kind of find somebody that you're really in love with and kind of like have this new view of the 5th house. The 5th house is also about creativity. So there can be more painting and dancing and drawing and dreaming and being super visual and kind of daydreamy when it comes to your personal projects. But many Scorpios with the 5th house, they're going to find that they're either going to fall in love or they're going to start planning a family. So if you are a Scorpio who's been thinking about getting pregnant or trying to get pregnant, it's going to be really great for you because Pisces there is exalted. So with the positive aspects that it's making between your 5th house, which is true love and children, to your ascendant, it's like many people are going to find that that true love is actually having a child. All right, so then we have Sagittarius. This is your 4th house. So this is wonderful for relocating, wonderful for buying a new home, wonderful for expanding a home. If you want to buy a second home, if you want to have family come and visit you, if you want to go to another state and visit family. Jupiter in the 4th is always just about an expansion in the family. And many people will find that they're spending more time in a bigger home to some extent. So if you've been living in a studio apartment, maybe you move to a 1-bedroom. If you find that suddenly you're like, oh my God, we're having a baby, you need to move to a bigger house. But it can also be within the family as well. And with Jupiter being in that place, many Sagittarius are going to start dreaming and thinking about, do I want to buy that house in Mexico? Can I live in Spain for 6 months? Like, do I want to try opening a business in Asia? All kinds of big expansion dreams are going to start happening. And many of you guys will find that you're either going to want to live by water, or you're going to want a pool, or some aspect of water around the home, fountains and things like that. So if you're somebody who wants to build a swimming pool, that might be what you end up investing in with that Jupiter and Pisces transit. It's also great for growth emotionally. You know, I feel like the fourth house gets kind of like tossed to the side. People think it's just about where you physically live, but it's about your roots, right? So you might find that you start getting to the root issues in your life and to find happiness and how you can build happiness within yourself and within your home space. And you might find that you're researching more and learning more also about your family lineage and your roots. Sorry, it just got brighter in here. I can definitely see that the color is changing. All right, so then for Capricorn, it's going to be your third house. So that deals with communication, contracts, cars, siblings, short distances. So you might be learning a new language. You might be wanting to learn a foreign language, or learning to read or write in another language. You might be adopting a new belief system, getting more into like self-help books, podcasts. Going for walks can be really good if you've got Pisces in the third. That can be like your meditative state, right? Going for walks around your neighborhood, listening to your AirPods. Maybe it can be automatic writing and journaling. You might find that you're just wanting to write more, and that's coming out of you, wanting to communicate more. New vehicles can happen during this transit, new spiritual practices, new gadgets, phones, laptops, cameras, all kinds of stuff. This will be really great for you to be able to do that. And I would recommend keeping voice memos. That can be good too. If you're not somebody who is big into journaling, you can do that. It can be a great time to go on a trip with a close friend or a family member. If you want to like book that trip and go overseas, you might do that in this next year. And I can also see that this is going to be about learning more about new options in vehicles. So definitely a Jupiter transit in the third can be great for that. Starting new programs too. If there's something new that you want to learn, it can be a wonderful time for you to be learning digitally, or just learning more about your thought process and how you think and how you communicate, right? With that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that's going to happen, it's about learning to trust your intuition more. So be aware of that. All right, so then for Aquarius, this is your second house, money. So it's interesting because, yes, Jupiter in the second house is financial expansion. It does deal with foreign money, maybe even money that comes from other countries. It can be a time where you're spending more money as well. So with Jupiter and Neptune there, you know, pay attention, first of all, to like get rich quick schemes. That's something that you want to be careful of. You might notice that money also just disappears, it dissolves. You're like, what did I spend my paycheck on? Like, oh, I spent this much money going shopping, or I spent this much money on all of my bills and my subscriptions. So it's a time to really know what you're doing with your money, where your money is going. I feel like a lot of Aquarians are also going to have lots of changes with their liquids. Like some of them might completely stop drinking. Others might put a focus on being like, I'm going to drink this gallon of water a day. Liquids are very important when you've got the Jupiter Neptune in the second house. You might opt to do more liquid dieting, or you might replace one of your meals with a shake. That might be something that you do. And you want to just be aware of, like I said, like, you know, Jupiter can also create like swelling. So a lot of a high salt intake, right, as an Aquarius rising, you might notice that you feel really bloated, or that you're having swelling in your joints, or you're having swelling in your feet or in your ankles. So you really want to look at your salt intake. And like I said, on the money side, yes, more money can come in. Like you can get big paychecks, big payouts, chunks of change. But also it's happening while Saturn is in your first house. So just because you have all this more money coming in this year, don't be blowing it. Try to focus on saving it, because the next Saturn transit you're going to have is Saturn in your second house. So you might have a nice run for the next 2 years, but be careful with where you invest that money and what you do with it. And then finally, we have Pisces. So this is your sign. It is going through your first house. This is a complete rebirth. giving you the opportunity to totally expand your vision, how you see yourself, what you believe in, and it brings you happiness, joy, optimism. It's a great transit. It's perfect for traveling, self-development. Pregnancy can happen because Jupiter on the ascendant, you get bigger and you're a little bit more optimistic about things. You can also have weight gain. So if you have Jupiter that's transiting your ascendant or your sun, you are more predisposed to gaining weight. Not everybody will, but talk to anybody who's studied their transits. Whenever Jupiter's on the ascendant, you can gain a few pounds. Granted, it might be water weight, but because Jupiter wants to get bigger, a way to feed that is just to be mindful of what you're eating, be mindful of calories in your liquids, and also feed your Jupiter. You know, it's about being kind of wanderlust and traveling more and being more kind of willing to expand your horizons. And in doing so, like a relocation or taking a new course, it will kind of satisfy that Jupiter feeling of needing to expand. But also your intuition will be very, very, very strong. So that's the other thing. Pisces in general, you're already very intuitive, but between Neptune on your ascendant or around a personal planet with Jupiter, you're gonna have like these like, that's so Raven, like psychic moments where she like kind of trips out and she can kind of see into the future. You're gonna have that, but you're gonna have it not when you're sleeping, it's gonna be when you're awake. So you're going to start to just feel things so much more deeply. There's going to be real deep levels of just emotionally just like cracking wide open. You're going to be very empathic in this next year. Might want to really invest in those salt baths now more than ever. But I also feel like it's going to make you more compassionate. I think for all the 12 signs, you know, Jupiter going into Pisces is going to really align and make us realize where we need to be more compassionate to other people. And whether this is dealing with, you know, the outcome of what's happened with the pandemic and like really wanting to help other people, wanting to give back, taking better care of our veterans, especially when it comes to their physical health and their mental health, food drives and giving to those who are homeless or who are needy. That's also Neptune's territory. Some would argue and they would say it's also Uranus, but I see Neptune as, you know, what is sacrificing and what it means to give. And if we haven't been brought closer to seeing that we are all in this together in the last year or two, as a result of Jupiter going into Pisces, we're really going to feel it. And it's going to be really important for people to be aware of the emotional impact that we have on one another. So I'm excited to see what it does. I'm really kind of optimistic. I think it's going to be quite wonderful with the aspects that it's making to other planets. And I will keep coming back and talking to you guys weekly about this stuff. So hopefully this is enough to just get things kind of rolling for you mentally and start preparing for all of these emotional and intuitive changes that are coming. If you liked this video, please leave a comment or a thumbs up. I appreciate it. It's going to help me get this out there and spread the news of my videos to be able to help other people. And yeah, if you'd like to book a personal reading with me, check out my links below. Otherwise, I will be back soon to talk to all of you guys about this, the rest of the month's astro weather. And one thing I didn't say at the beginning of this is kind of like an evergreen video. This isn't just about 2021 and 2022. Granted, you know, in 12 years, Neptune's not going to be in Pisces, but this is a video that can apply to also if you have Jupiter in Pisces in your own natal chart, right? So a lot of this will apply to you. And if that's the case, you're having your Jupiter return and it's a very lucky year. But you can come back to this at any point in time and you can learn more about the Jupiter transit. Eventually, I think I'm going to have a bunch of videos on my page where people can benefit from that, looking at their natal chart, not just transits as well. All right, so I will talk to all of you guys very soon. Thank you for tuning in with me, and you enjoy the rest of your Jupiter in Pisces. Take care.